Welcome to Snip and Sip, the podcast where we cut through the noise about plastic surgery while sipping our drink of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Scottsdale, from my real name, Dr. Mata. We're gonna talk about funny, we're gonna talk about trends, we're gonna spill the tea and all the secrets. All right, guys, welcome back to Snip and Sip, our podcast. Well, today I'm only joined by one co-host, my lovely wife, also known as
Nurse Scottsdale.
Yep, or Jeanette, my wife, right? So do you remember what episode this is?
I believe it's 12.
Actually, she's wrong. It's actually number 13.
Oh, really? Okay.
Lucky number 13 is where we're at, guys. So it's kind of crazy. We started this little journey several months ago, and we've been a little bit on hiatus because life got a little crazy over the last couple of months, right?
Yeah, and holidays and all that good stuff.
Yes, family, right? So, but we're back. And what's our topic of conversation this week? Do you remember?
It's about social media and how social media influences plastic surgery.
Again, I don't know if there's a better topic than that from that standpoint, right? Because the world has kind of changed lately, right? With the whole loss of TikTok, with the reapplication of TikTok, right?
But it's back.
I know it literally disappeared for maybe 12 hours if you got on it. I know when I got on it, I was like, hey, President Trump is looking to help us, so sorry, but it doesn't work. And then you had to close the app. Did you try to get on?
I did, and people were freaking out about it.
Well, I think people were freaking out because people make money off of social media. So if you're a TikTok influencer and you get paid for what you post on there in terms of views, in terms of marketplace, in terms of these things, you make a living. And so if all of a sudden somebody took your money away, what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, try and find another avenue.
Right? Well, what are those other avenues you think they should try? Like OnlyFans?
No, I mean, there's like Instagram. There's the Reels on Instagram that they can start posting. I know Facebook also has something rather
new. Now they have like hour-long episodes, right?
Oh, do they?
But before we get too far, what is our drink of the day?
It is a watermelon spice. So it has ginger, it has Palo Santo, and it has lion's mane mushrooms.
All right. So
cheers.
It's probably going to suck, but we're going to try mine anyways. Not my favorite.
What do you taste?
Like a horse's ass?
It's probably the Palo Santo that you taste.
Yeah, you said mushrooms. Mushrooms in a drink just doesn't draw my attention.
I don't think you taste the mushrooms though.
I don't know.
You're tasting the ginger. And
I like Moscow mules. I taste ginger, but that doesn't taste just like ginger.
It's supposed to be a healthier drink.
Yeah.
It's a substitute for alcohol.
Yeah, well, I don't drink alcohol, but when I do, it's got to count. It's got to have good taste, right?
Yeah, this counts because it's not alcohol.
Okay, fair enough. So how do you think Instagram, now getting back to our topic of social media influencing and plastic surgery, how Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat have kind of defined or promoted cultural norms now?
I think a lot of people, especially clients that I see, they come and ask me about certain procedures that they've seen on TikToks. One of them, and I think it was like last year, it was Barbie Botox.
Barbie Botox,
Yeah,
okay.
that was like the main thing. And at first I had to look it up because I'm like,
what is Barbie Botox?
Is Botox to the traps.
Trap Tox is what I call it, not Barbie Botox.
Yeah, but that was a whole thing. It was like a Barbie Botox because you know how the Barbies are kind of like slender with a long neck.
Long neck and no shoulders, right? Just collarbones and that's it.
Yeah, but that was a really big thing.
So if you wanted Barbie Botox, how many units would you inject into a trapezius muscle, which is basically your spine muscle in the back that kind of guys get as they work out their backs?
We're injecting at least 50 per side, 50 units per side.
Gotcha. So let's say on the cheap, Botox is $12 to $15 a unit. If you're getting it diluted correctly, that's kind of expensive. That's 100 units. That's like $1,200 every 3 months to look like Barbie.
But
Did it last
yeah,
3 months?
and people were coming in thinking it was a new thing, but it was not something new. It's just somebody just brought it up, and it just became this big thing. And I was like, well, it's been around for a long time.
Correct. But what is old is new, and what is new eventually becomes old, right? So that's a interesting way to sit here and have smaller shoulders versus most guys like, hey, I need to have this
They
big
want
shoulder
big,
look,
yeah.
right? But women don't. And so I get their perspective. So that's one example. How do you think, besides Barbie talks, it's kind of influenced the beauty ideals that we see? Because I know for a while, like it's been a while, but like, for example, like lip flips. What's that? Since this is kind of your cup
Yeah,
of
the lip flip
expertise.
is just Botox to the upper lip. And that just, when you smile, your lips kind of stay out. So they appear to look more fuller. But it doesn't work on everybody. But so,
Again, you have to have good muscle tone. And what she's talking about is basically putting botulinum toxin, fancy word for Botox, right, into your orbicularis oris muscle, right? That's the muscle that goes around your mouth. Every time you squeeze, that muscle gets tighter. And so some people's lips go flat. As we age, sometimes our upper lip actually gets longer. And so that's where we have to do
so that's a
a
different one.
lip
But
lift.
yeah, but the lip flip, and like it, and I always tell everybody it works only if, like, when you smile and your lip kind of goes in and almost disappears. That'll be fantastic for that kind of people. But if they don't need it, they don't need it. It's, you're just wasting money.
Yeah, because it's not going to make a change because the muscle has to do the work of lifting
Lifting.
your lip, right? How do you think viral trends kind of play a role in all of this? And I know when we think of virality, we think of TikTok. We don't really think of viral things like Instagram, right? Or Facebook or Snapchat.
Not viral trends, but I want to say Instagram also has that effect on people. We all follow like the one girl that we all want to look like, you know.
Who do you
So
follow that you want to look like?
I guess I'm not.
Oh, there you go. I put her on the spot. She's like, oh, shit.
I can't tell you right now, but most people do. They follow somebody that they want to look like them, and they, hey, I want my lips to look like this. I want my cheekbones to look like this, and it's usually a person that they follow.
I would kind of agree with that. I kind of laugh because on my social media, my dynamics are a little differently, right? Because I'm not sitting here doing Botox and fillers, even though I do that from a case to case basis. I get comments when we're traveling or we're at the beach and they're like, God, your wife is goals, meaning you. They send me comments like, hey, don't take this the wrong way, but your wife is hot. And it's not coming from a guy, it's coming from a female who's like, damn, obviously, you know, they feel bad about asking if you've had work or not. But they're like, damn, she looks good. And whether it's your face, it's funny because yesterday we went out to dinner for your dad's birthday, right? And I have this new thing on my phone that it rotates pictures from wherever. As long as you put like somebody's face, it'll rotate their pictures through your screensaver, right? And I showed your mom a picture of you and she's like, hi, who's that modelo? And I'm like, that's your daughter. And she's like, no. Remember? I showed her and she's like, and she was being serious. I know you took it as a joke, but she was like, that doesn't look like you. But I take really good pictures of her. She takes really shitty pictures of
I
me.
don't.
Really?
I think you look good.
Yes, but you don't
The
take good pictures of me.
They're good pictures.
She always makes me look like this. And
No,
versus
I
I
don't.
always get pictures of her like looking in the distance like she's trying or, you know, for photo shoots, just on the fly I get those pictures. I don't send them to her, but I keep them. And now that they're cycling through my phone, people are like, damn, she looks good. I'm like, yeah, she always looks good. But she always gets crappy pictures of me.
No, that's not true.
It's very, very, very true. You know, I think going back to the topic of we all follow people that like we kind of want to emulate or look like. And I think the hardest part about all of this, especially with social media and how it shapes beauty standards, is that for some things they're achievable, other things are not. And I think sometimes that gets lost in translation when you're like, you see this filter? That's what I want to look like. That's what I remember from, let's say, maybe 4, 5, 6 years ago when Snapchat filters were all the rage. It was like Facetune, right? But now they're kind of built in. even if you just take a regular picture with your iPhone and just compare it to the camera mode, the picture looks better than regular camera mode because it's like it's got a built-in little like pixelated situation where you already look better in your picture than you do in real life. Whether it's the flash, which will make you look like you have less wrinkles, right? Less cellulite, less acne
This
scarring.
is the filter phenomenon that everybody wants to look like the filter.
Absolutely. And I would sit here and say some of those things are kind of achievable, some, not all of them. And I think the hardest part is when you're talking about like that Instagram face, right? Or fuller lips or that your jawline where it's nice and chiseled or your high cheekbones, which I just have round cheekbones, not high,
But I mean, some of the stuff, yes, you can get it with filler, you can get it with surgery, but there's stuff that, with those filters is like, even your eyes are positioned in a way that they're different, right? They're bigger. Like there's certain things that they're really hard to tweak. And people like, well, this is me. I'm like, I know that's you, but that's a filter. It's not really you. And I get that a lot. Like, I want to look like this. I'm like, well, that's you, but that's not really you. Like, right? And
but
that's
then
hard
I
to.
would sit here and tell you, okay, so they want to look like their filter. And everybody thinks one CC of filler is going to do that or one procedure. I think some of the best examples lately are Donatella Versace. You look at Lindsay Lohan, right? And they used to look beat up, tired. You're like, gosh, they look horrible. Madonna, Demi Moore. You guys know what I'm talking about. But when they give themselves time to heal from surgery, okay, not Botox and just fillers, even though those can be part of it, you can have amazing results, right? Like you can sit here and be like, you look good. Now you look like, holy shit, amazing, right? And I think Lindsay Lohan is probably the best example of what really good, subtle, but aggressive plastic surgery. And when I say aggressive means I didn't do Botox, fillers, and lasers. I did upper eyelid surgery. I did a rhinoplasty. I did upper eyelid surgery. I did a mini facelift with some fat transfer, facial resurfacing, and you put all those things together with good makeup and good allowed time to heal, you're going to look freaking amazing. And that's what I mean by aggressive, as opposed to most people like, oh, it's so subtle, it's so modest.
Just
But
one thing at a time, but it just takes a long time. And
correct. But when you do everything, you're going to have greater downtime. But that's what gives subtle. Surgery is supposed to be subtle. It's dramatic when you go from 60 and you look 30. That's dramatic. But if you're 35 and now you're 40 and now you look 35 again, that's subtle. You're like, God, what does she have done? No, she actually had full facial work that looks subtle. And I think that's the new trend in 2025, right? Is how to be truly mindful.
some
And-
more
and be-
subtle changes.
Correct, subtle. But sometimes it takes surgery to get subtle results. And I think everybody thinks of surgery as super dramatic, but if it's done well and done appropriately in the right order and fashion, you can get these results where you're like, damn, her surgeon did a phenomenal, and I mean phenomenal job. But it wasn't just one thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, I agree.
So, but, on the topic of filters, I think it's good for people to have like expectations, but I think it's hard when your expectation is just a filter because everyone's like, hey, if Lindsay Lohan did it, but I'm going to sit here and tell you it was probably 6 figures plus that she spent to look that way. And again, if your job is to be a model, then I would say it's totally worth it. But if it's not, you're like, I look like this and I want to look like this. I'm like, you better save up because it's going to cost a lot of money. And remember, if you do it gradually in a stepwise fashion, yes. But as you do one procedure and you wait a year or two before you do the next one, that procedure has already aged. So it's never going to be as good as when you combine everything. You have one result, one time to recover, and then you're like, everything is following that same timeline. It's like you're winding the clock back. The clock keeps moving. You wind it back, and it's
Just
not at
catching
the same
up.
time.
Yeah,
You're always kind of chasing your tail. So I sit here and I say that. How do you think, content creators affect cosmetic surgery? or plastic surgery from
Well, I
that
mean, I think
standpoint?
they're kind of normalizing surgery. I mean, with their, when they put it out there, they kind of tell you the good and the bad. I think people sometimes they don't know what to expect as far as recovery results, and I think I'm not saying all of them, but most of them kind of normalize it and make it real. Like, this is what I went through, and some people videotape and everything, every step of the way.
I would say I agree, but I wholeheartedly disagree because as I sit here and I do surgery for a living, that's the majority of what I do. I see plenty of people that are social media influencers or content creators. And again, content is a very broad word for depending on what kind of content you create. You guys know what I'm talking about. There's the family content and then there's the triple X content. Those are both considered content creators. Some of them my kids can watch, like Blimpy or
Blippy,
or what?
blippy.
Blippy or triple X stuff that you're like you normally would have to pay a lot of money for. And they both create content, but it's very different from that perspective. And I think the hard part for me is like, and I've said this before, I'm like, if you have surgery and you're passing it off as you didn't have surgery, that's totally your choice. I'm never going to sit here and call you out. Like, I thought it was funny because, today, for example, there's the meme going around George Bush, like kind of looking funny as he was like understanding or not understanding things. That I feel that way when I'm out in public and I'm like, oh, that's a nice ass. And the patient will turn around. And I say that in my head because I appreciate beauty or like, hey, I'm like, it kind of looks like that person had a BBL. And I turn around and I'm like, oh, that's my patient. I've said that a couple of times when we've been to the Suns game. I'm like, wow, that person's really curvy. And I was like, oh, hey, I did that. And I didn't even realize who it was. But sometimes I'll look at other people and I'm like, gosh, like that looks overdone or something doesn't look right. But remember, if I'm your doctor, I'm never going to go out to you in public and be like, hey, how's it going, Sally Smith, right? Because I never want anyone to know that they know me. Now, if they'll come and say hi to me, then of course I will respond and be like, hey, how's it going? But I'll never sit here and acknowledge that
You know them.
that I know them, because if I know them, they're like, how do you know the plastic surgeon, right? Unless they're willing to put it out there. One of the things that we talked about recently was there are plastic surgery offices that will show you and give you detailed instructions. I would probably say from ChatGPT or from a surgeon that sit here and say, okay, this is what you're going to do for people not to think you had a BBL. You're going to sit here and you're going to post like you're going to the gym, even though you're starting bigger. Then you're going to post that you're at the gym. You're going to have surgery. You're going to still pretend like you're going to the gym. So you film enough content to kind of buy you time. And then you go back to the gym and you're like, hey, look at my transformation now that I've dieted, I've exercised, I've still been showing like I've gone to the gym. And it's like, wow, you did it with just diet and exercise. And I say that's always tough because I think 4 years ago, I had somebody come see me and they're like, they were pretty fit. But they're like, hey, I want a BBL because I want my ass to be better because I'm going to the gym and it's still not getting where I want to be.
But I think those are different things, though.
No.
I mean, that workout butt is more muscular, like there's more tone. BBL is more like fluff, more juicy, more plump.
It is, but we can make athletic BBLs. I think from the perspective, we certainly can do that now because I think the BBL now, everyone's like, oh my gosh, the BBL's gone. It's disappearing. It's dead. And I'd sit here and say it's not. It's just, again, it sounds so cliche, being mindful and demure and being super judicious of where you put the fat, where you can make it look muscular, still have hip dips. Because understand, if somebody doesn't have hip dips, it is a BBL. There has been fat augmented to that area to tweak that area. Because if you have a muscular butt and you have fat there, it's fat. It's not muscle. You can't have muscle rounded out. It just doesn't work that way. But the thing about this patient going back 4 or 5 years ago, it was funny because she used to follow me, right? I did her surgery, everything. And then after the 6 weeks, she came in. She's like, hey, am I good? And then all of a sudden she unfollowed me, started posting content of her in her gym, and she started selling workouts. Like, hey, this is me before, this is me after. Look at how much my workouts have made an improvement. so that now she was selling what she was doing. And people were like, oh my gosh, that's an amazing result. And some of those things can happen with diet and exercise, but certain aspects of it are totally fake, guys. You just have to understand that. Like, I can look at, for the most part, somebody and be like, oh yeah, they had a Pilates look or they had high def lipo to accentuate certain things, because you can look at it and when they move, I can see it. Maybe others can't, but it's kind of built into being a surgeon that you can see these changes. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of see it when somebody's had overdone filler in their cheekbones or their jawline, or especially the tear troughs where it's
puffy.
It's overdone, right?
Or the lips where it's migrated.
So do you think, because like I would sit here and say the best example, at least from my perspective, if somebody like the Kardashians or the Jenners came out and said, this is the plastic surgery that I had, I think that would totally change the paradigm where people are like, holy shit, they were honest about it. That means I don't have to be so critical of myself.
Trying to hide it, because if they had it, that made it okay for everybody else to do.
And I think, but again, that's kind of like Kim coming out with her video, right? That like normalized having sex tapes, right? And again, that made her. She was kind of famous, but after that, she became infamous, which then led to a billionaire. And it all started with a sex tape. And it's like the first one, like, oh my gosh, and everybody's looking at it. And now like, oh, there's a sex tape. We've seen them, whatever. They're on OnlyFans. You can pay for that. What's the big deal, right? But when it comes to surgery as celebrities, it's, no, I've never had any surgery. I've just had lip filler and I had it removed. My breast went from nothing to something. And it's funny because somebody showed me a screenshot of her video back then. And in the video, you can see scars. So you could tell that she had surgery on her breast. I couldn't sit here and say anything else, but if you looked at the breast, you could clearly see where the scars were. So she did have surgery based on the video, but nobody ever talks about that, right? They were just ready to look at that. Look at Ray J and the rest of it. But again, there's nothing wrong with having surgery, especially if you scar well. Yeah. But again, being honest about it, I think, is what's going to normalize society. And I think the goal for this year is to be more honest and upfront with things, and to have stuff that is not as dramatic as it's been in the past, where your lips are duck lips versus they're like, hey, those are full, but not overly done. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. So do you think it's more beneficial or more negative having people like post about their journey?
From my perspective, I appreciate the honesty aspect. Like I said, you don't have to sit here and say who your surgeon was. But if you trusted them to do your surgery, you should show the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Then what I mean by that is every surgery has a recovery period. Every surgery is going to have bruising, swelling, some more than others. But that's part of the healing process. And sometimes everybody thinks surgery is perfect. There's always going to be issues that come up. But it's how your surgeon tries to handle those issues that makes the difference, because not everything I do is ever perfect. So if there's an issue, then I do my best to go and make it right. Some surgeons don't. Some surgeons expect for things to be off, and that's as good as it's going to get. You know, but again, the human body is that we're starting with, that we're working on, is never perfect. So at the end, can it be perfect? No. Can it be better? Yes. And I think that's the biggest difference. And I think when society decides to be honest and upfront about it, I think it will really get to the point of, okay, it's not about whether you had plastic surgery, it's whether the plastic surgery was worth it or not to get you what you wanted, at least from my perspective. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
Do you think that plastic surgery now is more socially accepted than it's ever been in the past? Or you think it's about the same? Because again, me and you have been on this journey since what, 2016, right?
I think people are more open about it. I think maybe like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I think it was something that you knew people had it, but they weren't talking about it. I think it was more like not as accepted. I think now it's more like socially
acceptable.
Accepted,
yeah. And I think when we're really honest with people about what we've had done, I think it really allows people to be like, oh, wow, you look great. it doesn't look like you had anything done. Well, yeah, that's the goal. That's the goal of good plastic surgery, for people to be like, you look good, but it doesn't look like you had work done.
Yeah,
So
I
I think that's
agree.
always my goal.
Yeah.
How do you think the aspect of viral trends, like when we're talking about hashtag like lip flip, Ozempic face, Ozempic butt, nose job journey, right? Like these are the big ones that are out there right now. How do you think those kind of play a role into influencing people to have surgery or not have surgery?
I think whether that influencer or the content creator, if they look good, I think people would want to do those. But if they look way overdone or kind of look a little weird, it's going to make people not want to do it. And I think we do see a lot of those influencers out there that are overdone. And I mean, at least to me, it's something I don't want to do when I look at them. But I think there's always people that like that. And I think it's kind of both ways. It could be negative and it could be influential where people want to do that.
Yeah, I think it's very much a double-edged sword. Every time I see a mom who comes in and they're like, "Hey, I want lipo and I want some fat transfer to the butt," they're like, "But I don't want." But the first words is like, "I want it, but I don't want. But I don't want. But I don't want. But I don't want a big butt."
Yeah.
And I'm like, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't want to look like Kim Kardashian, and I don't want a big butt like so and so." And I kind of laugh about it because I'm like, sometimes they're really skinny. So even if they wanted that, you couldn't do that because there's not enough
They couldn't
fat.
have it. Yeah.
But I think the big difference is if you look at some of the pictures, for example, and again, I don't want to bash on the Kardashians or the Jenners, but they're the people that most people have heard about or seen about. There's pictures of Kim Kardashian whose ass literally looks bigger than if we put both our bodies together, right? Like
Yeah.
her ass looks ginormous. And these are pictures from paparazzi, right? But then you'll look at pictures now from her where whatever she's dieted and exercised or Ozempic or Wegovy or Mounjaro, GLP-1s, and her butt is smaller. And like I said, does it help to have these things? Yes, but it does also help to have a good surgeon that can liposuction and tighten that butt to make it look better
I
when
mean,
it
it's
was
still
made bigger.
big. Like she just shrunk. I mean, it's still a big butt, but not as huge as it used to be.
And that's the thing. If you said Kim K from 2019, 2020, maybe not. But now if you said, hey, I want a butt from Kim K 2025, maybe that might be a good thing. But it just depends, And so this is where the whole journey, the whole viral trends that they literally popularized women having curves. Because before then, it was how skinny can you be? How much of a toothpick can you be?
Yeah.
That made it sexy. Paris Hilton, right? That was like all the rage and
Yeah, just like tits on a stick or just,
tits on a stick, right?
that was all the rage. And now and then it was like the whole curves and
And I think now we're going back to curves, but subtle curves. We're not going to exaggerated from, the late 2010s, early 2010s,
Yeah.
now in the
more
early
slim,
mid
but
2020s, 2025, that now it's more modest. It's still having curves, but not as dramatic, at least from what I'm seeing with patients that I operate on from that standpoint. We're talking about implants, but we're not talking about ginormous implants. We're talking about modest, good cleavage. And I think, if anything, when we're talking about implants, they're super modest, where it's like, are they real? Are they fake? Is it just a padded bra? I think now we're going away from super big to more like Kendall, maybe Kylie on the big area, and more Kendall looks than,
more
gosh, they're Pamela Anderson kind of style, and some of you probably have no idea who Pamela Anderson is, right? So I think if we're talking about the pros, we also have to talk about the cons of, influencers, content creators when it comes to creating dysmorphia, right? Or real life versus filters. How do you think that counterbalances when we're talking about the cons of all of this?
I think those content creators too. I mean, all the filters sometimes is people want to look like them, but they don't really look like whatever they're posting. So I think it's given a negative, I don't know, just judgment of people, especially our younger girls, right? Like, oh my gosh, I want to look like her because she's so pretty.
You
But
see her in real life, does she look like that?
no, no. And I think I think that's the negative when it comes to influencers and creators.
Growing up for me, anyways, and I can only speak for me, we would call them actually role models. There was no social media, so all we looked at were athletes, were people on TV
Our magazines.
or magazines. Those were considered role models of what the beauty standards were. Now, anybody on social media is a role model for somebody. Even though you might have 10 followers, you might be a role model to one of those individuals. Like you are a role model for people who want to be like you, who are successful in what they do for their job. They are an amazing mother. They're a great wife. They're pretty to look at. They're smart. They hustle. You're a role model. And probably 9 times out of 10, you would never sit here and say, hey, you're a role model. Like you just think of yourself as doing what you do every day. But there's people that would be like, gosh, I wish I had my shit together like she does. You're a role model. But we take this for granted. And I think this is where I wish society would, especially the really, really big influencers that have millions of followers, that they do more good than harm. And what I mean by that is understand that there's a lot of people watching you and you carry a lot of sway. So if you sit here and you take those filterless days of like, hey, this is what I look like without filters, guys, understand that social media is not real. It is the perception of what I want you to see. That does not make it real. It just means I want you to see what I want you to think is real. But understand that. But if we have days where, hey, this is what I am. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is real life. And I think hopefully this year we'll have that trend of, hey, how about we start a week where it's like there's no filters. It is what it is. I know we would probably lose our shit. Like if all of a sudden we took all your makeup off. I think she's still beautiful that way.
I'm okay. I mean, I don't wear tons of makeups just to start with,
But like I said, if we were like that all the time, there was no makeup allowed. So your acne scars, your fine lines, your wrinkles were out to the world. Everyone would be like, whoa. But that's real life. That's who we are. Yes, it's nice to add to that, but we still live in the real world. Like you can't have your makeup on. You can't have your filters on 24/7. So there's always the memes of like, hey, this is what a person looks like. And then the filter, they turn their head and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, that's what they look like. Like that's scary, right? And my catch term for us at the office is catfishing, right? Like we sit here and we portray this person, this perception, and you're like, God, they look so good on social media. And then I see them in the office and I see their hair extensions and I see their acne or they just got out of bed and they look a certain way. And I'm like, that's who they really are. But what they present on social media is so different. I know there's been times where we've had people in the past that work for us. They're like, who's this person on your social media? I'm like, that person works for us. She's like, no, she doesn't. I'm like, I go there and I see these girls and they don't look like this. And I'm like, well, yeah, but this is them dressed up and looking their best.
more than once. I'm like, who is this? Or like somebody comments and I was like, who is this person? And he's like, oh, it's so-and-so that works for. I'm like, really? No, it's not. It doesn't look like them. But
So, it is what it is. Hopefully, as a society, we start to normalize being normal and not having filters. And I think filters are not a bad thing. But when you sit here and your goal psychologically is like, I want to look like this filter, that's not real life. And I think that's where it leads to a lot of issues between what expectation is and what reality can be. Good surgery can help, but it's never going to make you look like a filter.
right.
Wouldn't you agree?
I agree. Or fillers or surgery or anything.
Again, the purpose of all these things is to make you better, not to make you perfect. Remember that. It is about improvement. It is never about perfection because perfection does not exist. That is worse than zero.
Or making you look like somebody that you follow on social media.
Yep, but it's out there. And again, they make a living off of it. So more than likely, that will not change. As long as you are something that somebody else is striving for and you make a living off of it, you will continue doing that.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, heck, that's part of why we're in business, right? Is to help people be better, not perfect, right? So in our last topic, it's what is the future of social media and cosmetic surgery? Where do you see that going as the platforms continue to evolve?
I mean, I think they're just going to be bigger and bigger. I mean, most of everything we're looking for, we find it in social media. Instead of Googling something, I'm sure we go to like TikTok and Google whatever we're looking for, right? So it's
But
not.
you still call it Googling,
I know, but it's like
right?
weird because I'm old, so that's what we used to do. But now we don't Google, we TikTok it,
True.
right?
I think now social media is the new search engine for people's education. Like I said, if TikTok disappeared, I think people wouldn't know what to do. They're like, if I sat here and I asked some people like, how do you take a picture? They're like this. I'm old enough to know this is how you take a picture because this is what a camera did. But now it's a button, it's a flip, it's a touch on the touch screen on your phone. So I think that evolution is going to take some time, but you know, I think from the perspective, at least when it comes to me and my practice, and you've been involved in this in a long time, I've been using 3D animation / AI tools since 2014.
Yeah.
This is before they became a rage, where I would literally take a picture of you and I'd be able to show you before and after in 3D. And you're like, wow, this existed in 2014. Now people are like, Facetune. Well, we kind of had that in plastic surgery since at least 2014, since I started using it. Mm-hmm. And even to this day, there's still surgeons like, oh, I don't believe in the 3D. And I'm like, the 3D is the patient. And honestly, what the computer does is average at best. Mm-hmm. That if you can't do better than the computer, then I don't know what to tell you. I think that's probably where we have some issues, but the AI tools are there. I know they're going to continuously grow and evolve, don't you think? So all the face tunes, all the filters, how AI now, like I think we even have it on our website, right? For our
fillers.
For our fillers and lasers, and to see how you take a picture of yourself. And if you go to our website, you can take a picture and it'll show you what 2 cc's of filler may look like, or
For
like
area, lips, cheeks. Yeah.
and I think it does a pretty decent job of like, oh my gosh, is this going to be too much? And you're like, oh wow, that's it. And you realize that you need way more than that from that standpoint, right?
Yeah.
You know, I sit here and recently you did a procedure on me, right? Mm-hmm. So I actually had filler for the first time in probably 10 years, at least. No, maybe like
10.
5. Maybe like 5. It's been like 5 years, I would sit here and say. And so what did I have done? What did you treat for me?
I did your chin and your jawline.
And it's funny because all I wanted was for my jawline to be a little more defined. And what did you say to me that morning?
Maybe a little bit on your chin.
No, that's not what she said. She's like, you're not going to do your chin? All confused. Like, you're not going to do it? And I was like, wow, I didn't realize that I needed to do my chin. But obviously, if she's the expert at what she does, I said, okay, fine, do my chin. But how do you think that makes me feel as a plastic surgeon here? And your wife's like, you're not going to do this?
Well, if I'm already treating one area, why not do the other?
Yes, and I would sit here and I don't disagree with her because, again, my chin didn't bother me. Like, I thought it was fine from that perspective. But again, that was the one area that I had treated 10 years ago. And then 5 years ago, I had 10 years ago, I had 4 cc's to my chin. 5 years ago, I had 1 cc to my chin. And now this time I had 3 cc's and what was it? 3 and 3.
3 and 3. Mm-hmm.
So I had 9 cc's of filler put into my face. And we use something called Belafil, which is a long-acting filler, because if I use anything else like hyaluronic acid or ADS, which is calcium-based, they disappear within like 8 weeks. And I don't want to do anything that lasts 8 weeks on me because, like I said, my metabolism is pretty good. But again, it's good from that perspective, but bad when it comes to fillers. And so I'm like, what, like 5 days out, something like that?
Yeah, that was last Friday.
Yeah. There you go. So today is what, Tuesday? So yeah, like 4 days. 4 days. And so I'm a little sore, but that's how much filler it takes. And I would say I still look the same. Nobody even knew that I had anything done. Well, part of it is because I had facial hair. That's one of the secret sauces to camouflaging whether you have anything, if you have bruising, guys. But only guys can get away with it unless you're the bearded woman. No disrespect, okay? But when I asked you to do it, what did you say?
Yeah.
She didn't say like, oh, you don't need it. She's like, okay, if you want it, do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, who am I to say you don't need it? I mean, probably I would tell that to other patients who maybe have a lot of filler, but you don't have a lot of filler.
And like I said, 9 cc's of filler in one session, and you can barely tell I had anything done. That's the perspective of the resources that it takes sometimes to get a result. Part of this, and I talk about my own experience, so you guys sit here and understand that it's not vanity, but it's about like, hey, if I can tweak something, and like I said, I always get a little judgmental with myself around what?
Your birthday.
My birthday. My birthday's coming up, and so yeah, I'm about to be 46 years old.
But it's about aging gracefully. I mean, we're all aging, and we can't stop the clock, right? But if we can age better, looking good as we're aging, why not?
I agree, and I think to tie all this up, when we're talking about augmented reality and AI and where the future of things are, I have the luxury of being involved in plastic surgery since 2005. Okay. That's when I started learning how to be a plastic surgeon. So 20 years, guys. I've had the fortune of seeing what before and afters look like, of following my patients long term, of seeing results, of seeing other people's work and some of their before and afters. And I've experienced the real reality of this is life before and after. AI helps to speed up that process for other people to see it. But ultimately, AI will never replace real life, right? Because it's augmented reality, augmented, not reality of what it is. Will it help? Yes. Will it sit here and replace the artistic eye? No. Can it create art? Sure. But I think when it comes to plastic surgery, you're combining both the mathematical aspect of proportions, balances, of looking at somebody's face, and yes, you could measure it and be like, what's off? But just because it's off doesn't mean you can take it surgically and make it perfect. You can make it closer, you can make it better, but ultimately that's up to your surgeon and their artistic eye. Don't you think? Even as an injector that you sit here and you're like, you got to have that vision of what they're going to look like before you do it.
Yeah, not everybody's the same. Like, everybody's different. So I feel like if it was, AI, I think it would probably make everybody the same. I would try to give the same measurements to everybody, and everybody would start looking the same.
And I would say that's takes what are unique aspects of what we are and what we do away. And always the goal of good plastic surgery is to make you look better for yourself, because there's nobody better at being you than you.
Yeah.
So that's what I'd say. So what's our word of the day? You don't remember, huh?
I don't remember.
The word of the day is everything we've been talking about, which is reality. Please live in reality. Yes, social media, content creators, influencers, they play a big part in plastic surgery. But ultimately, when you look in the mirror, you're not going to see anyone else except you. And I think our job as providers is to make sure.
Education. I mean, make sure that everybody gets the right information out there. That don't lie about certain procedures. Just be real and educate.
I couldn't agree more. So, yes, our word of the day is reality.
Yeah.
So, if you want a free Dr. Scottsdale T-shirt, send us a DM, a snap, a tweet, a TikTok, and say the word reality. And the first one can come to the office and pick up their free T-shirt. What are we talking about next week? Do you remember?
I do not remember. It's late. So.
Yes. Well, our topic for next week is going to be reversing plastic surgery.
That's a good one.
That's a hard one because that's about 40% of what I do. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. I hope you had as much fun listening as we did recording. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all podcast sites for new episodes, as well as Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Stay snatched, stay hydrated, and until next time, cheers.